Good afternoon, and thanks for having us here today at the Population Health Services Research Autumn Series. We're very happy to be part of this seminar series today. So we were originally due to give this talk at the beginning of the summer, and the title of the talk at that point was 5 Positive Outcomes and Challenges. But we think that everybody has enough challenges in their lives these days, so we've changed the title of the talk slightly. So we're going to be focusing on the positive outcomes today, and we're going to leave the challenges behind us. So I'm going to start off with just an introduction to the research area, give some background on the trial, and then move on to discussion on what we believe are some of the positive outcomes that have resulted in our PPI work. Between 40 and 65% of people living with MS have difficulties with cognition. The average age of onset of MS tends to be around about 30 years, and the condition itself has quite an unpredictable course. MS and the cognitive difficulties have wide-ranging impacts on a person's quality of life and daily functioning in areas such as childcare, work, social and self-care activities, and many other areas. So cognitive difficulties in MS are associated also with an increased likelihood of unemployment for the person who has got cognitive difficulties with MS. But despite the high prevalence of cognitive problems experienced by people with MS, very little has actually been done to address these issues and these difficulties, and more importantly, the impact that they can have on a person's daily life. In Ireland, there's about 9,000 people living with MS. Cognitive difficulties are also shown to correlate with some other challenges and symptoms that people have, such as fatigue and depression, and also the ability to maintain employment, social activities, managing a home, and self-care activities. So these difficulties impact on all aspects of a person's life, and clearly they suggest a need for a targeted approach for cognitive rehabilitation. So however, there haven't been many studies that have looked at rigorous programs that have been developed to reduce impairment and increase functional ability of people with MS. The COB-MS program then was developed to provide holistic cognitive rehabilitation for people with MS. The COB-MS program, which is a cognitive occupation-based program for people with MS, it focuses on rehabilitation through an individualised cognitive intervention. It's measured by and is taught through occupational participation. And with this, the participants have access to a non-pharmacological treatment for cognition that focuses on aspects of their own daily life that are important to them. And the COB-MS program, then, in terms of its structure, consists of 8 sessions, and there are a mix of individual and group sessions within that. The focus in the COB-MS program is on managing daily life, managing employment, and community engagement and social engagement. It does that through using routines, compensatory strategies, and streaming demands of the person. The focus really is on helping the person to participate more effectively in daily occupations that they find difficult due to their challenges with cognition. So the aim of the current research is to evaluate the feasibility and preliminary efficacy of the COB-MS program on cognition and daily functioning of people with MS. The study design is a single-blind, cluster randomised controlled feasibility trial of the COB-MS versus a waitlist control group. So we're looking at public and patient involvement in research. I believe that there are ethical reasons why patients should be included in the planning, design and implementation of research. The effectiveness of any PPI program is strongest when people with lived experience of the condition that is being studied are part of the research process and involved as research partners. So when writing the funding application for the COB-MS feasibility trial, I wanted to make sure that there was a strong PPI focus throughout the trial. The intervention itself had stakeholder involvement, but there is limited PPI involvement in the pre-application stage of the funding application. And this was partly due for funding reasons, which is commonly reported as a challenge for researchers who are putting together grant applications. Though I anticipated that it might be a challenge to have a PPI member as a contract researcher, I believe that it would be key for the feasibility trial to have an experience-based expert contributing to decisions about the trial. So both Robert and I are going to discuss 5 key areas in this talk and our reflections on these areas. So namely, we're going to look at recruitment, we're going to look at developing materials, integration, the participant information sheet, and collaboration. Recruitment in general can be a tricky process. So our aim through the project was to recruit 120 people with MS. So as we were recruiting, there were some geographical areas that we were finding it difficult to recruit from. So we had done a call through the MS Society, through occupational therapists working in the area, through social media, newsletters and various other avenues, but we were unable to recruit adequate numbers in some geographical areas. So one area, for example, was Donegal. So there's quite a high incidence of MS in Donegal, and we had 2 occupational therapists that were recruited onto the trial in Donegal that were trained and ready to deliver the intervention to people in the area. But we were finding it very difficult to recruit anybody from Donegal. So that's just one example, but there are other areas as well. So because of this, we developed a press release for the trial, and we submitted that and sent it through the NUI Galway press office in the hope that we'd get some local or national press that might be able to pick up our study. But unfortunately, we didn't get much interest in the press release, so that's kind of what we were hoping for in terms of getting to those difficult to reach participants. So it was around this time that Robert decided to get involved in the recruitment process. So he took it upon himself at this stage to do interviews on radio, and also to get involved in interviewing for print media with a specific focus on those difficult to recruit areas. So looking at, for using Donegal as an example as well, newspapers that were in Donegal and radio stations in Donegal, as well as other areas. We also at this stage consulted with the wider PPI panel as well to get their views on the best places to recruit from. And we took on board a lot of their input too about maybe looking at places like the Farmers Journal and things like that covers quite a wide geographical remit in its in its reader base. So Robert's input allowed the people that were listening or reading to hear the experience of somebody living with the same condition as them, and explain the research process in a way that's meaningful and understandable to them. He told a story, and I think that's really what made the difference, telling his story. So this allowed the listeners and the readers to connect to our programme in a way that we hadn't anticipated.
That the university was looking for somebody to act as a paid advisor to a new research study about MS. And I thought, well, God, at least I could do that. That would be something that I could get out and do.
I'm very qualified for that.
But that's it. Yeah. I knew the disease, and it would give me an opportunity to represent what people with multiple sclerosis need out of research.
Yeah.
And to make the research more effective, I suppose.
I suppose from a research point of view, it's driven personally by you because you understand every nook and cranny of it. You've been on the journey, you've walked it for 27 years.
Absolutely. And see, my drive, as you say, is based not just on me, but on a shared experience that I have with many other people who have multiple sclerosis. And the joy for me is if this research, which is about cognition, which is a huge issue for people with MS, more than 50% of people with MS have some cognitive problems. If the work that I do as researcher can make this therapy better, more effective, easier to administer to the patient, that would be a hell of an achievement. And I would love to have that as my way that I can contribute to my community.
So you're looking for like-minded people, Robert Joyce, to get involved in this study, because you want to build this from the bottom up effectively with like-minded people. All right, well, listen, good luck with it. Come back, Robert Joyce, and let us know you're getting on with it. But the fact that it's being driven by you, diagnosed 27 years ago, yourself and Dr. Sinead Hines. It really is. It's a very good approach, and well done to you, Galway, and well done to you for spotting the ad, for getting involved in it.
It was pure luck, really, that I spotted it. But it is, I know from my point of view, it is, for my mental health even, it is phenomenal to have this opportunity to be part of a group of people that are trying to find a solution to a problem that a lot of people have. And I think that's amazing.
So this effect on recruitment has been reported elsewhere as well in other PPI interventions, where research has found that PPI input into recruitment has a modest but significant increase in participant enrolment. And that was definitely the case from our perspective. So from Albert's efforts, we started to receive a lot of phone calls and emails and things like that, specifically from people in those areas that we had targeted, so those difficult to recruit areas. So there are definitely still barriers that exist around recruiting underserved communities, and research and clinical research has, for the most part, failed to adequately address this issue. And involving PPI members, though, from those underserved communities, I think could be a good way to try to increase the diversity of the participants that we recruit onto randomised control trials or any kind of clinical trial. The Include roadmap that's developed by the NIHR is a nice way of looking at the different stages of the research process and where researchers can act to include more diverse groups of people, particularly those defined as underserved, and that's definitely something in the future that we're going to look at.
Developing patient materials. The COB-MS trial meets every 2 weeks. At these meetings we discuss what has happened over the previous 2 weeks, and we also plan what is going to happen in the future. At one of these meetings, Sinead asked Chris, the postdoc on the study, to show us the manual that was being presented to the participants. It was beautiful. It had a shiny cover and a layout that looked fantastic. And it had what I think is called a blind binding. It was something that I would be happy to have on my bookcase or even on a coffee table. I can understand the pride they had when they showed it to the group. My problem is I have multiple sclerosis. And this causes all sorts of problems, sensory problems and manual dexterity problems that people who don't have the illness don't really fully appreciate. For example, my fingertips, they feel like there are fireworks going off in them all the time. So everything feels a little bit like sandpaper, but also my understanding of whether I'm touching something or not is compromised. This means that when I do something that requires some fine manual movement, it's really difficult. And in fact, I avoid it usually. Now you can understand when I looked at that book, I saw something completely different. It was a book that was not suitable for me. It did not lay flat on the table, or I would have to hold it open, which would be quite difficult. The pages were slippery, and so it was difficult for me to know whether I'm touching the page or not, and made it difficult to turn the page. These are some examples of how that booklet was not suitable for somebody with MS. So my only choice at that stage was to tell the team. And I explained it to them, and they questioned me on why I needed certain things to make sure. And I think that's very good to have that discussion between everybody at the table, open, honest, and exploring the reasons why I say what I say. To further improve this, Sinead asked that we present this document that she had already prepared and a new one to our patient advisory panel. They received it, looked at it, and they came up with a few more suggestions that would make the participant manual a little bit better. And that included a pouch at the back for any loose materials. I think this is a fantastic example of why it's important to have the patient at the table. The researchers don't always know what question to ask. And by having the patient at the table, I could let them know what they were missing, what they didn't realize that they should ask. They never touched those books with these hands, but I did, and I knew what was missing. What is the benefit of this? Well, when the participant comes to take part in the study, when they open up that book, they'll subconsciously realize that we, as the researchers, understood their situation and compensated for their particular difficulties. However, if the original book was used, the participants would think, do these people know what it's like to have MS? Do they know what our problems are? And does that then create doubt in their mind about the efficacy of the treatment that we are presenting to them? You can't, on one hand, say this is good for you, yet give the patient something that doesn't work for them. It's a contradiction. And that makes it very difficult for the participants to take part in the study effectively.
So we've tried to integrate PPI into lots of different aspects of the trial. The most important and probably the most significant, and the reason that we're kind of here today really is because we had Robert employed as a contract researcher on the trial. And when we were advertising and interviewing for that post, there was great interest in it as well, which was really nice to see. So there's definitely an appetite there for people to get involved in these kind of paid positions. We also have PPI members. We've got 2 PPI members on our trial steering committee, and we have a PPI advisory panel as well. So the PPI advisory panel have been involved in lots of different decisions that we made along the way. So one being around at the beginning, we had some feedback to say that the battery of outcome measures that we had it was too lengthy and would maybe add to patient burden or participant burden. So that was one of the things that we worked on at the beginning with the PPI panel. So in conjunction with advice from the steering committee and our PPI advisory panel, we managed to cut our outcome measure battery without losing any kind of focus on the key outcomes that we were interested in, which was really good and has really added to the participant experience as well. The PPI panel have also, so before we had to change to an online delivery of the intervention, they put together a list of important things to think of from the occupational therapist perspective when they were running groups, the COB-MS groups with participants. So a lot of things around patient comfort and different maybe symptoms and things like that that might impact on participants' experience of the group. So that was really helpful, and we were able to adapt that then, the areas in that list that we came up with that were relevant to the online delivery of the programme. So that's now been given out to all of the occupational therapists who have been working on the COB-MS programme. And Robert has also spoken to the occupational therapists on the online occupational therapy training of the COB-MS as well, and gone through some of those and some other questions and answers and things like that that the OTs might have had that they might not be comfortable asking the participants about. They had the chance to talk to Robert about some of those questions and concerns that they had, which was really helpful. We've also presented some data back for further interpretation and things like that to our PPI, our broader PPI panel, and we've got some really good insights and feedback from them on that, which has been really useful. Robert has been involved in all of the decisions and all of the meetings that we've had as part of the research project. Robert has also been really useful asset in terms of the training of the research assistants on the trial as well. So Robert has taken the time to talk to the research assistants before they go out and collect data with participants, which has been really nice and has been really helpful for putting the research assistants at ease before they go out, and just giving some feedback on the best ways of talking to people or delivering outcome measures and interventions and things like that too, which has been great. One thing that we had to do was adapt due to COVID. So part of that, we had to get back onto all of our participants that we had recruited and ask them if they'd be interested in staying involved with the trial, even if we were to do online delivery of the programme. So this job was divided between three of us. So the postdoc on the trial, myself and Robert, we split the participants between us because there was quite a number of phone calls to be made, and rang people about whether or not they were interested and what needs and things like that they had. So it was really useful feedback that Robert got from a lot of the participants. So myself and Chris, the postdoc on the trial, basically we mostly got yes, no answers and a few other things, where Robert was able to get a lot more detail from people, which was interesting, around needs and things like that. So as a result of that, we have ordered phone stands for participants, because most of the participants on the trial are going to be connecting using their mobile phones as opposed to laptops or tablets and things. So we are providing the participants now with just a basic mobile phone stand, so they don't have to hold the phone. There'd be no issues with around the experience. If they have fatigue and things like that, that might be affected if anybody had to hold a phone for an hour and a half. So that was really useful as well. Robert has also been involved in writing up our communication and dissemination plan. So that's a work in progress, and we're thinking about new ways of disseminating the results for the trial the whole time. But it's been really good to have Robert's insight, and we're also going to bring it to our wider PPI panel as well, to get some feedback around the best ways to disseminate the information out to the participants.
I started this job as an assistant researcher in July of 2019. I wasn't really sure what type of role this would be. I had the feeling that I would just let them know whether we're doing something right or wrong for people with MS in the study. It was with great surprise then when, after being in the job only 2 weeks maybe or 3, Sinead asked me if I would be interested in developing a patient information sheet. I really did not know what it was going to be, and I explained to her that I had never written something like this before, and it would be a challenge, but I was willing to give it a try. So I asked her for a few examples, and I looked at them and they were very stuffy, very densely written, very legalese, and coming from a quasi-accounting or legal background, it kind of made sense to me. But as somebody with an illness, it didn't make sense to me at all. So I embarked on this project of developing a patient information sheet. I found it very interesting, and I looked up a lot of information online about different types of information sheets, but I thought they all looked a little bit, again, very stuffy. So when I wrote it, I had lots of air in the text. I actually decided to first address the question of what is this study looking to answer? And I laid it out in a table where you have a question and the possible answer or resolution that this trial would hopefully give to the participant. And you can see it on screen, an idea of what that my patient information sheet looked like. At the same time, the postdoc in the study, Dr. Chris Dwyer, also prepared a patient information sheet based on his experience as a researcher. These two documents did not look the same. And we decided to do what's called a SWOT. It's a new term for me, but a study within a trial, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. We decided to see if there would be any impact of the two different types of information sheets, one designed by a patient, the other designed by a researcher. The jury's still out on whether there was any difference between the two of them from the point of view of recruitment. We have yet to see whether it has any role in retention of patients in the trial. That will come. What I loved was I got the opportunity to do something a little bit different. I got to challenge myself, and I got to share some of my experience as somebody with multiple sclerosis. Lydia O'Sullivan compared the two documents that we had prepared, And on this table, you can actually see the differences between the two. My one was easier to read. It was using a better font, different spacing. And that, in theory, should make the document more acceptable to the patient. We still don't know whether it's going to make any difference or not, but at least we have something to look at and examine. It is interesting that I intuitively understood what needed to be in the document. I didn't have to do research on that aspect of it. I didn't have to think about it, and I didn't need to follow some table of what is acceptable or not acceptable in a patient information sheet. I just wrote down what I thought should be there. And I think that's the contribution that patients can make, is we have different things that we're looking for. First of all, we want to understand what is this study about and what can I get from it. Then I need to understand, is it something that I could possibly do from a time point of view or an energy point of view or even a cost point of view? And only then do I start looking at the more technical stuff. That explains the order in which I put the information on my information sheet. My advantage over a researcher who doesn't have multiple sclerosis is that I am reading that document with the eyes of somebody with MS. And I understand the needs of the person with MS. That is my contribution. And if we work together, then we can get better documentation that is more suitable for the patient and ultimately will have a better trial. By working together, we will be able to develop better information sheets for the patient. Hopefully that will make it easier to recruit suitable patients for a trial, and also that they will retain or stay within the trial for its duration. When this trial moves on to the next stage, the much larger study, I think the patient information sheet that we will develop will be different from both of these, combining aspects of both to make a much more effective information sheet from the point of view of the researcher, but most importantly from the point of view of the participant. We will get better quality participants, more engagement and greater retention throughout the study. That is my hope. Collaboration. The previous 4 positive outcomes, developing materials, participant information sheet, integration and recruitment, there's this theme running between all of them, and that is collaboration. The team has worked together as one, and we're all looking for the best possible way of conducting this trial so it's the most effective for the participants. You can see that there has been a flow of discussion between all of us. We're striving to find the right solution. So with the patient information sheets, you saw we looked at 2 different types. We tested them. And for the next stage, we'll have a better patient information sheet in that trial. But also you can see the researchers have been listening to me, the patient, our patient advisory panel, as well as the broader community when I was speaking to the participants before we went online. I think collaboration is so important, and it is a way of getting all the stakeholders in research together, working together towards a common goal. It isn't an us and them. It isn't an add-on. It isn't even tokenistic. All of those things don't apply when you have true collaboration. I think that's what makes this trial special. When the therapy was first devised by Sinead, it was in response to somebody who has MS. And when that trial completed and it was seen to be effective for this feasibility study, the MS Society was there at the very beginning when the grant proposal was drawn up. And I have been employed from the very beginning of this trial as an assistant researcher. The patient panel has grown, and we even lost a member, Deirdre Dolly, may she rest in peace. It is so important for research going into the future that we have more collaboration, that we work together and we find the right questions and we work together to find the right answers.
In conclusion, PPI members are experts of their own condition. So they have experience that's invaluable to the design and the running of clinical trials, as well as being aware of the needs, the worries and the expectations of participants who take part in our trials. Hopefully through the examples that we provided here, you got some insight into some of the areas that have worked well for us in the COB-MS trial. Our PPI members are experience-based experts who contribute knowledge that's complementary to that of our research team, and they have led us in our case in the COB-MS trial to making some really important changes in key areas. There are those who feel that in order to be taken seriously we must evaluate involvement as we do other research processes, though that view has been debated more in recent years. If PPI is viewed as part of the research process, then maybe we'd be better served by just capturing the negative and positive aspect of the process instead, as we do with other research processes. This is an ongoing debate that we're having in our own trial, and we still haven't fully come to a decision on it. So finally, I just want to thank all of the PPI members who have helped us to get to where we are with our trial today. Also, a big thank you to our research team, so Dr. Christopher Dwyer, Fanula Rogers, Anusha Moses, and Emer Ban, who've been part of the trial since we started at various stages. So we'll leave it there for today, but we're both happy to take any questions, comments or suggestions that you might have now. So thanks very much.